I never imagined I'd be writing something like this, but I need to get it off my chest. Maybe someone will read it and understand the twisted mess of choices and consequences that has unraveled my entire life. I don't know if this is a confession, a plea for forgiveness, or just the rambling of a broken woman. But here it is. I met Michael when I was 23. He was solid, steady, and kind in a way that made me feel safe. I'd always been a little chaotic, the type who lived for excitement and attention, but Michael grounded me. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't the center of the party, but he was dependable. He made me laugh. He made me feel wanted, and for the first time in my life, I thought maybe I could actually build something real with someone. But before him, I had been seeing someone else. Brian. He was the complete opposite of Michael. Reckless, cocky, a little dangerous. He never promised me stability, only thrill. And for reasons I can't even fully explain, I still let him into my bed even after I started dating Michael. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself it would fade. But when I found out I was pregnant, the world tilted. I did the math in my head over and over, and the truth was brutal. The timing meant the baby could very well be Brian's. But Michael had already proposed, already talked about the future, already painted this picture of a family. I wanted that. I wanted the safety. I wanted the version of me who got to be a wife and mother in a stable home, not the girl who chased after a bad boy. So I made the choice. I told Michael he was the father. I buried the possibility of Brian. I smiled, I cried happy tears, and I swore I would make myself believe it. Michael took to fatherhood like he was born for it. From the very first ultrasound, he was in love. He held my hand through the sickness. He built the crib. He painted the nursery. When our daughter Emily was born, he cried harder than I did. He stayed up for every feeding, changed every diaper, and when I was too exhausted to function, he held her to his chest and hummed until she stopped crying. Watching him, I felt guilty in ways I can't describe. He adored her, and she adored him. And the more time passed, the more I let myself believe she was his. I convinced myself it didn't matter. She called him Daddy. She ran into his arms. She had his mannerisms. Maybe the genetics didn't line up perfectly, but love was what made a family. That's what I told myself. Years passed, and our life looked picture perfect from the outside. Michael worked hard, provided for us, loved us without hesitation. I tried to forget my secret, but guilt has a way of poisoning even the happiest moments. Every time Emily hit a milestone, every time Michael looked at her with pride, there was a whisper in the back of my mind. What if she isn't his? It wasn't until Emily turned 6 that the doubts started pressing harder. Family members would comment, "She doesn't really look like Michael, does she?" Or, "She's got such different features." Michael would just smile, shrug, and say something like, "She's got her mom's side." But I felt the panic spike in my chest every single time. And then something shifted. Michael started pulling away from me. Not from Emily. He was still the doting father. But from me. He stopped initiating intimacy. He worked late more often. He stopped looking at me the same way. At first, I thought it was just the stress of being parents, of life wearing him down. But the distance grew colder, sharper. When I confronted him, he brushed it off. "I'm tired," he'd say. Or, "It's nothing, really." But it was something. I could feel it. It happened on Emily's 10th birthday. We had a big party, the house filled with balloons and laughter. Michael played the perfect host, grilling burgers, organizing games, making Emily feel like a princess. I was almost lulled into believing everything was fine. That night, after everyone had left and Emily was asleep, I found him sitting alone at the kitchen table. He had a glass of whiskey in front of him, untouched. His face was blank in a way that terrified me. "I know, Sarah," he said, his voice calm but final. My stomach dropped. "Know what?" He looked at me then, and I'll never forget the deadness in his eyes. "Emily isn't mine. She never was. I've always known." The room spun. I stammered, tried to deny it, tried to cling to the lie I'd been living for a decade. But he cut me off. I did a test when she was 2. I swabbed her cheek, sent it in. I've had the results for years. I couldn't breathe. My world shattered in that moment, but worse than the revelation itself was the realization that he had known all along and said nothing. Through tears and shaking, I asked him why. Why would he stay? Why would he pretend? Why wouldn't he tell me? He said because he loved Emily. From the moment she was born, she was his daughter. Blood didn't change that. He wanted her to have a father who was there, not some unreliable man like Brian who would have been in and out of her life. He chose to be her dad, even knowing the truth. But me? He admitted he couldn't look at me the same way. He stayed for her, not for me. Every smile, every kiss, every "I love you" he gave me over the years was laced with bitterness. He said he thought maybe he could live with it. Maybe the love he had for Emily would be enough to drown out the betrayal. But it wasn't. By the time she turned 10, he couldn't stomach living a lie with me anymore. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he set conditions. He told me we would tell Emily the truth when she was old enough to understand, but until then, nothing would change for her. She would always know him as her father. But as for us, he wanted a divorce. The words gutted me. I begged him, I pleaded, I promised we could fix it. But he was resolute. "You made your choice 10 years ago," he said. "Now I'm making mine." The weeks that followed were torture. We lived in the same house but felt like strangers. He slept in the guest room. We only spoke about logistics, Emily's schedule, bills, the divorce paperwork. And the worst part? He never yelled. He never raged. His quiet calm was more devastating than any screaming match could have been. It was the sound of a man who had already mourned the marriage years ago and finally decided to bury it. The divorce went through quickly. He got partial custody of Emily, and I watched as she continued to run to him with joy, completely unaware of the storm raging underneath. I became the villain in my own life, trapped by the consequences of a lie I told to protect myself, but that ultimately destroyed everything. Michael is thriving now. He's dating again. He looks lighter, freer. Emily still adores him, and I know he'll always be her father in every way that matters. And me? I'm haunted. Haunted by the man who loved me enough to raise another man's child as his own. Haunted by the choice that cost me everything. Haunted by the look in his eyes when he said, "I've always known." Because in the end, it wasn't the DNA that ruined us. It was me. My lies, my selfishness, my cowardice. I wanted a safe life, a happy family, and I thought I could build it on a foundation of deception. But the truth has a way of waiting, simmering, and then exploding when you least expect it. Now I live with the ashes,